anyone, frankly, who's had any experience with MS-13 or any of the other Hispanic gangs that are kind of reflected in this issue have, nothing but vehement hatred for those groups because of how brutal and horrific their activities are and how much they ruin people's lives. And so for Democrats to kind of, again, build this up as an issue, I just think it's going to have the absolute opposite effect with people on the street compared to the media. Hello, I'm Tom Rogan. Welcome to Restoring America, a project of the Washington Examiner. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you're watching and our various social media feeds. We appreciate that. But I'm joined today by my colleague, Jeremiah Poff. Jeremiah.
Tom, good to be with you again.
I think we're talking about some illegal immigration issues today.
So we have this situation with this El Salvadoran national who's been deported by the Trump administration to El Salvador, and he's being kept at the infamous Center for Terror.
KECOT, right?
Yeah, KECOT, I think is what they call it.
Right.
But this massive prison that President Nayib Bukele built in El Salvador when he cracked down on all the gangs there. So this is causing a lot of controversy because this distinguished gentleman has been here in this had been in this country for some time. He's married to an American citizen, but he had been found deportable some years ago, but he was never deported because he had claimed that if he was going to get deported to El Salvador, he had reasonable cause to
fear for his human rights.
Right. I think it was fear for violence.
Right.
I think it was a gang violence, which obviously, as we know, El Salvador has really gone from a hotbed of gang activity to absolutely nothing at all in the last couple of years. So that kind of that complaint that he had didn't exist anymore. Now, the interesting thing is that the Trump administration has said repeatedly that he is a member of MS-13, and they just released documentation from an arrest where he was arrested with several other members of MS-13 in Maryland. However, the media, by and large, have basically painted him as this upstanding model immigrant citizen who is effectively been deported illegally by the Trump administration. And Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland has even flown down to El Salvador, tried to come get into the prison to go meet with him. While he was there, the Trump administration released all the documentation showing all the things that he had been doing here. It's effectively, they just the Democrats, I think, again, walked into a trap that Trump had laid for them, and they're just defending, again, a guy who's got a history of not only gang activity, but domestic violence as well. Right,
and we're seeing more, and I think that's my viewpoint was that this was, originally not the hill to die on for Democrats, even if the conduct of the Trump administration in ignoring judicial orders is unacceptable. And I think there will be a showdown with the Supreme Court in the coming months that is significant, and I think Trump will lose, and I think that will be good because Marbury Madison, it's the court that says what the law is. But to your point, where you have someone who is not an ideal, upstanding, not a citizen, who had a deportation order, who has this sort of
was an illegal immigrant and an El Salvadoran national,
and has this problematic backstory, and I imagine that's probably going to be the tip of the iceberg. Now Democrats have sort of trapped themselves, as you said, right? That Trump has laid the trap. I also think it's important to note that, as much as there has been highly critical coverage of Bukele and this sort of, slightly arrogant disdain that he's going to not send the guy back.
How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
The success that he has had in El Salvador is historic and deserves more media attention, and is reflected by the support he has among the El Salvadorian population.
Well, not just El Salvadoran population. You pull his popularity in most other Central and South American countries, he's more popular than their own leaders in many instances. Far more popular than their own leaders in many cases. And what you're seeing is in Honduras, in Panama, in these other countries, in Guatemala, and these other countries that have been dominated by violence and gangs for decades, you're seeing movements, basic copycats basically arise, and it's completely changed, I think, the political dynamics of that region. And it's open. I think it's the Biden administration, for when they were in office, kept talking about addressing the root causes of illegal immigration. But the greatest thing that could be done to address those things was establish stability in those countries, because most of the people who are fleeing those areas are fleeing, one, for economic reasons, but two, for gang violence reasons. And so if you're able to provide a stable, peaceful, city for people to live in, then the economic, issues kind of take care of themselves. You can't have a thriving economy if you can't go out in the street at night. Right. And that was what Bukele did in El Salvador. And now, it's created it's completely changed the political dynamics in that region. And to the point about addressing the root causes of migration, you're actually seeing far less migration from those countries as a result.
And I think as an extension here, one of the reasons that this is not going to be politically salient for Democrats is that, whether you're Hispanic American or, any other American, most people who have had any experience, anyone, frankly, who's had any experience with MS-13 or any of the other Hispanic gangs that, are kind of reflected in this issue, have, nothing but vehement hatred for those groups because of how brutal and horrific their activities are and how much they ruin people's lives. And so for Democrats to kind of, again, build this up as an issue, I just think it's going to have the absolute opposite effect with people on the street compared to the media, right? The media loves it, but no one else loves it.
And so this is one thing I think the media just still hasn't grappled with, is the fact that they can push all these stories out all they want, but it's not going to make a dent in public opinion, because the public doesn't give a crap what the media thinks, right? Or how the media presents it, because the media just is not trusted by and large.
And I think it just as a juxtaposition to that, though, I think on tariffs, the media may have an effect, right? If goods prices start increasing, if people's wallets start hurting, if the economy looks increasingly uncertain, then Trump has a problem. But on this is a winning issue for Trump.
Which is why it's so silly for the Democrats to latch onto it, because if they could, but the thing is that the tariff issue, I think, for them exposes some divides within their own party.
Yeah.
But if they're all unified about the immigration thing, the only problem is it's the exact thing that Trump wants them to talk about.
Right.
And that's the thing that's why they still can't find their way out of this wilderness on this issue. And I mean, Trump's ratings on the economy have slid in the last couple of weeks, but his approval ratings on immigration are still like 60%.
Right.
Which is,
And again, to that Democrat, to that constituency of Hispanic Americans that Trump has been so successful drawing into the Republican fold, anyone who is the vast majority of decent Hispanic Americans, they despise those gangs more than anyone else. So this is not going to help Democrats with that constituency.
Right, and I think it's just going to make them feel more out of touch, and they're going to, 6 months or a year and a half from now, if they're still beating this drum, it's the Republican Party is just going to be handed a gift for messaging in the midterms.
Right.
They can say, you put these guys back into power in anything, all they're going to do is focus on stopping the deportation of gang members.
Right.
And, I can't think of a better thing that Republicans would want to talk about in the debate in the midterms.
Right. Must save MS-13. You can already think of the thing. All right. Well, anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'm Tom Rogan, Jeremiah Poff, my colleague here, giving us a very erudite analysis. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you're watching, and subscribe to our various social media feeds as well. Our boss is very happy when we say that. So thank you for watching.